So you always need to do a project setup, and I'm going to move through these steps pretty quickly just because I'm assuming this is, upper beginner, lower intermediate. If you want more info on some of the things that we'll be doing, like version control or whatever, I have other videos for that, and I'll link to those. First of all, we're just going to create a new Unity project. So your Unity Hub might look different just depending on how old this tutorial is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click New. I'm going to click my version, and since I had to reformat pretty recently, mine's going to be pretty recent. So for now, it's giving us the option of 3D, and the reason that I like the 3D template is that it's very stripped down. There's not much bulk in it, and we can isolate our assets pretty easily. I'm going to do this, and for you, you can call your tool whatever you want, but I'm going to call mine tutorial, and I'm going to call it SoundSystem so that I can keep this on my machine isolated a little bit. Figure out where you want to save it. I keep a folder on my desktop called projects. So once you get that set up, hit create, and then we'll wait a little bit for this to create. It may take a bit. And once that's done, you're going to be inside of Unity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my preferred layout, and my preferred layout is just layout tall, and then I'd take the game window and drag it down here. So then the other thing I like to do is I like to put this on a list view because I love lists and it's easier to manage my files that way. I'm also going to click this little triple dot and click one column layout, just like that. Okay, and at this point we're pretty set up. The other thing I want to do is when you're building tools, you need to consider how you're going to isolate your tool outside of everything else in the folder. What I mean by that is if I wanted to import this into a new project, can I contain it inside of a folder really easily? So what I like to do is I like to make a folder inside of assets and call it, create a new folder and call it the name of the tool. In this case, it's SoundSystem or whatever you choose to call yours. And I'm going to put everything related to the tool inside of here. So in this case, maybe I do want a test scene or something like a little sandbox thing that other developers can mess around with. So I'm going to put that in there. Let's actually rename it SoundSystem underscore testing or just something. Click reload because we're inside of that scene that we're trying to rename. Okay, so then if we want anything related to the sound system, we know that if we put it inside of our sound system folder, we can just take this whole sound system folder and drag it into a new project and we should be good to go. So that's our folder organization. We're gonna add some scripts here. So I'm actually gonna make a new folder and call that scripts. And inside of here, I'm gonna make a new script. And I'm gonna call this sound system tester. Whenever you name scripts, you want to try and name them to what they actually do. And often the more specific you can get with that, the better you will organize your code naturally, because if this script is responsible for testing the sound system, even though that could potentially be a very big script, which long-term may not be great, but it tells us exactly what it's doing. Where if I just called this sound system, I don't know what that is. Is it the tool? Are there other parts of it? Be descriptive with your names. I'm also going to make an empty game object inside of our scene. We're going to just call this the same thing. This game object is going to be responsible for testing our sound system. And I'm going to drag my script onto there just to make it really clear. That is what this thing is doing. This is the behavior that it has. I'm going to zero it out. And then later on, we can actually put, input detection here, and then we can call various functions inside of our script just to test it, because we do need a way to make sure that our scripts and our tool are working as intended. Once we have our scene set up and we're ready to start building, the last thing I want to do is I want to put this into version control. So I have a much longer series on how to do version control and management with that. So I'm going to move through the steps pretty quickly, but I'm going to link to the tutorial series if you want to know more in depth on how to do that. So to set that up, I'm going to be using Git for my version control. I think it works pretty well with Unity. Perforce is another one that's pretty common in games, but I'm just going to use Git. So unless you're using the command line, you may want some kind of visual client to work with your version control system, in this case Git. I like Git Kraken. There's free versions of it that I think are very robust and really cool. I'm just going to recommend Git Kraken though, just so you can follow along with what I'm doing. So now if I wanted to add a new project to version control, what I'm doing is I need to initialize a repository for where my assets are on my system. So then I can track all the assets inside of my Unity assets. So now I actually need to initialize my repository. So I'm going to come into here. I need to set up version control to start tracking in a folder because I want to watch all the file changes in that folder. So again, I have a longer tutorial series for this, but basically you need to navigate onto your system. You need to find the exact name of the folder you're looking to track. Remember, my Unity project is inside of here, right? You can see my assets and all that other stuff. I need to come out to the root. I'm going to press F2 and I'm going to copy the exact name of this folder, right? This is where you originally created it. And keep an eye on the full path here because you want this full path to be correct. This actually is correct, but just to double check, if you click the browse button, it's going to let you navigate inside the folders. Don't navigate inside of the folder you created, right? Stay on the root and don't select anything. Folder blank, sometimes it'll just select the Unity folder and that's fine. But basically you want to be in the root folder because it's going to take this and then it's going to append the name of your folder after that to create the full path. So this should be correct. It should be projects Unity, then the name of the folder that you created your Unity project. I'm not a huge fan of how they did this, but it is what it is, and just make sure that that's correct. I'm going to select a ignore template. This will ignore all the common junk files associated with Unity because you don't want to put that and track those. It's just frustrating and unnecessary. License, you can find more info on different types of licenses, just depends on what you want to do with your tool. MIT is a common one. We're just going to select that. You can look up more info on that later if you would like, and then we will create the repository. So if you did this correctly, you're going to see a WIP and you're going to see 30. This means that there are 30 files that have not yet been tracked that it wants to start tracking. So I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of how to use version control. Again, we have a different tutorial series for that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stage all the changes and say, yes, I do want to start tracking all these files. Now, if you don't see this, it's probably because you didn't do your initialization setup properly. So if I go into tool system and you can see hidden files, if you're seeing the gitignore stuff like right inside your parent folder right here with, all just like this, this is the correct way to do it. What's common, like a common problem is you will accidentally select another folder and it will append this twice. And so you'll see another folder called this, and then you'll navigate down in there and that's where your Git stuff is. That's wrong because you want your Git tracking to be in this root folder right here. So just repeat the steps again, go back and do it again, make sure that you get it set up right. Once you get there, you should see these files. I'm going to commit those. I'm going to give it a name. We'll just call it initial Unity files, something. You can give it a description if you want. Because it's just a starting point, it's not super necessary. I'm going to click commit. This just means that I want to save a state of all these files locally on my machine. But what I really need to do is I need to save these remotely so that I can grab these from any other machine I want. Or if I want other people to work on my tool with me, I can do that. Again, really quickly, I'm going to open up GitHub. If you don't have an account yet, you may want to create one. Inside of GitHub, I'm going to create a new repository. I'm going to give it a name. You probably want to keep this pretty similar to what you created before, but I'm just going to do tutorial underscore SoundSystem. It'll tell you whether or not that already exists. And at this point, you want to decide if you want to keep it public or private. For me, I'm going to keep this public because I want to be able to link this to the tutorial, and I want all of you to be able to see the different progress steps if you want to use that code to use for your own purposes. So I'm going to keep mine public. You may decide to keep yours private, and that's fine. Because we already made a README file and gitignore and license and stuff, leave all that blank. We just want to we just want an empty box so we can put things into. So I'm going to click Create Repository. And once you get this, the last step is we need to set up a remote so that we can push all of our local changes and push that into a remote repository, which would be the one that is hosted by GitHub. Easiest way to do that, I'm going to click this little copy button right here from the empty repo that we just created. I'm going to come into Get Kraken. Over here, I'm going to create a new remote. Remember, we're only tracking the files on our local machine right now. I'm just going to call this GitHub. Keep this real simple. Now, this link that we copied over here, remember this copy button? I'm going to copy that one more time. I'm going to paste that and click Add Remote. So now you should see this pop up here. And what we need to do now is we need to push our changes to GitHub. So you'll get this. It'll say, like, what branch do you want to sync this with? Just keep it at the default. It's fine. If you know more about that, you can do fancier stuff. For now, we're doing setup. And this may take a little bit. For me, I don't really have that many files in there. Best practice is actually to close Unity while you're doing this. You really don't want to, access files and manipulate them from two different programs at the same time if you can get away with it. So I probably should have closed Unity. In most cases, it's fine. But now if you push the files and you may see a little loading little circle spinny thing. Once that's done, you're going to see the GitHub icon and you're going to see your computer icon. That means both are synchronized. So once you have that, it's pretty cool because now we are tracking all the files. And whenever we make changes to our tool, we can save them and then we can push the changes back up and we can save our progress. And then if we ever want to use the tool again, we can just grab it from our repo, we can pull it into a new project and we can use it. So this is a really cool way to start long-term development of a project that we know we want to reuse and we don't want to dig in our files and try to find it. So that's all I'm going to say about version control. In a future week, I'll probably show you the process of making changes and committing and pushing it back. But from here on out, I'm not going to really focus on version control too much. I do think it's important to the setup process. So I think it's important to just establish that. And then, if you want to know more about it, you can go through the tutorial series for that. So that's all I have. We're now set up. We're in version control. We've created our project. We have our basic folder. We have our script. And now we're ready to start building our tool. And the setup process is, just something you got to go through. But once you get into the practice of doing it, it goes by pretty quick. I would be even faster if I wasn't explaining this stuff. But it's really important to set up your project so that you can build from a good foundation. So now that we have that set up, in future videos, we're going to walk through actually creating the different portions of our tool. So thanks for sticking around for this boring part. And next time, we're going to go into the building of our tool and get into the exciting stuff that I'm sure you all came here for.